This can happen to absolutely anyone.
We just got a call about a giant avalanche here in the backcountry of Utah.
A snowmobiler caught in an avalanche in Rich County has died.
Avalanches are no joke. Until you're directly affected by it, you don't actually want to accept it.
Scott was an amazing man.
He dug people out of avalanches, he's been in avalanches, he's been all through that sort of thing, and it's never stopped him. I went up next to him and I was coming back down when that avalanche started. Shut off my machine and I wasn't able to hear his, so I kicked mine back on and rode back up there and started looking for him.
So on February 3rd, around 2:30 p.m. in the afternoon, we got a phone call from the Rich County Sheriff requesting help with immediate response to an avalanche that had happened in the backcountry near Monte Cristo, Utah. He said it was a big slide. They were unsure of how many people were buried, but it was a very remote location. They needed all hands on deck and any possible help they could get to be able to start digging and searching for the victims. And our first mission and request from the sheriff was to head up to Powder Mountain, which is a local ski resort that is about 15-20 miles from where the accident happened. So we went up to the ski resort and landed at the very top parking lot at about 9,000 feet, where we then loaded in a full K9 rescue team. So basically the ski patrol that manages all of the safety and the avalanches and all the stuff up at the ski resort, well, they're also available for rescues, all around the local area. For that ski patrol team to be able to make it to the avalanche site by driving, it would have taken them probably close to 3 hours because you can only drive so far, then you get to a trailhead and you have to jump on a snow machine. We had the whole crew there on the ground within 10 minutes.
Search and rescue dog! Come out if you need help! Ladies, search!
Perfect. The last seen point was above that lone fir that's in the path. I think the best thing that we can have is people probing likely attachment spots right now, unless we get a dog alert. Okay. So anything fall line under that and like catchment areas, right? So trees or depressions or wells or anything like that.
So when we arrived on scene, we found a few things. First was the Department of Public Safety helicopter hovering overhead, and then we noticed on the ground there was the victim's friend and one or two other people who had made it to the site to begin searching. So we landed and let the ski patrol and their K9 team out so they could head to the site and start probing and searching for the victim. We picked up and headed back up north to pick up other sheriff's deputies and different people like that were also going to aid in the search, and back to the site to drop them off. All in all, at this point, we have delivered approximately 14 rescue personnel on the ground to begin searching, and aid in the efforts of finding this person that had been buried. All right, we just touched down here at the side of the avalanche. Big old heavy avalanche just broke off on a big cornice up there and broke off in big 4-foot by 10-foot chunks. We got some of the best rescue personnel in the state up here right now and their dogs, so.
My name is Warren Etheridge. I'm from Evanston, Wyoming, and Scoot would have been my cousin.
My name is Andy Wright, daughter of Scott Wright.
I'm Autumn. I'm Andy's mom.
He was on a snow machine from the second he could walk, and he was good at it too. He was insanely good. Can't tell you how many times I got stuck and he'd have to get me unstuck. It was crazy. One of his sayings though was always, it's not snowmobiling if you're not getting stuck. There's a few times I'd get stuck. I'm like, I don't even know how we're gonna get out of here. And he just, oh yeah, you just gotta pack this side down and flip it on over and you'll be right out of there. I'm like, okay, Scoot. He was a small guy, so he'd just walk on top of the snow, and right when I tried to walk where he'd walk, I'd just sink right down to my knees.
He was just an amazing person. We didn't have your typical co-parent relationship. We didn't go through court or anything like that. He could take her anytime he wanted and vice versa. He would come to my house all the time. He was just an amazing person. He was truly my best friend.
I remember when he'd go and help people out and stuff, and I'd be there with him all the time. A daddy's girl, I guess.
When snow falls in the backcountry, it falls in layers. And those layers over time can begin to deteriorate, especially when the weather warms up, you get rain, you get all these different layers of snow piling on top of each other. And sometimes you can get a really heavy layer of new wet snow on top of a layer of really garbage, slippery snow, which ultimately creates instability below the surface that you can't see on the surface, which can trigger the entire hillside to slide because there's no base for the new snow to land on and, basically stay put. The biggest things to look out for are, has there been drastic changes in the weather recently? Has the temperature fluctuated up and down? Has there been an excess amount of moisture, especially in the form of rain? Is there wind drifts? Has the wind been blowing the snow onto a certain area? Any slope that's about 30 degrees or steeper, you can pretty much count on there being an avalanche if there's any unstable snow there. Basically what we did is formed a line of people with avalanche probes. And what you do is you get the straightest line you can and you cover a very specific area, probing every, 6 to 12 inches in front of you and seeing if you can find anything that feels different than the ground. And our probes were reaching about 120 to 150 inches deep in the snow because it was a massive slide that had all piled up against some trees. So it was fairly complicated and not an easy search.
DPS on scene, Rich County on scene, Weber County on scene, 3 helicopters on scene, and as you can see, they're starting a massive probe line. So
when we stopped in front of that hill and I was like, "What do you think, Scoot?" He goes, "I think I'm gonna climb that hill." And wouldn't say it's cool, but a big slab of snow that came down from the avalanche that actually had his track on it, and you could see it. He was just full throttle. There wasn't no skis on it. It was just his track. He went up the mountain and there's a little lone pine tree on the right side. And I went up next to him and up and around that pine tree, and I was coming back down when that avalanche started. And from what I could see, it looked like he got out of it. So I scooted down so I didn't get caught in it too and shut off my machine, and I wasn't able to hear his, so I kicked mine back on and rode back up there and started looking for him. That was pretty much it. Called the 911 and they said search and rescue is on the way. I think it took them about 45 minutes to an hour, and the first helicopter got there and they gave me a transponder, right, where you can track the beacons. They gave me one of those, a probe, shovel, and snowshoes, and then they left again. And I don't think anybody was there but me for about another hour after that, and then the other search and rescue teams got there and started looking for him. And the rest is pretty much history.
Okay, slow it down. We'll do this nice and methodically. Okay, good left.
I remember the first time we went down to Arizona to go see our grandparents, whether fighting over music or stealing snacks, he was, there, and that was just a good memory.
And he was so good with Andy. He had her on the sled from the time she was 3 months old, and now she's a little throttle junkie, so.
I've heard a lot of people saying that he didn't have any avalanche gear. That was not true. He had his avalanche bag on. The sheriff said that he did have a beacon and we just couldn't catch the signal on it.
The critical part about avalanche safety is knowing before you go. Check the avalanche report. The Utah Avalanche Center is a great community, great resource to be able to look at daily forecasts and figure out what the snow conditions are. Make sure your beacon's on, make sure the batteries are good, and make sure it is in sending mode so that if something does happen, the search party who comes to find you can quickly and effectively locate you. If you can afford it, it's a good avalanche bag. They're basically backpacks that have inflatable airbags inside of them so that if you get stuck in an avalanche, you hit a button and it deploys this giant airbag, which drastically increases your chances of being able to stay on top of the snow.
That's most important thing, no matter how expensive it is. Always make sure you got it. I can't explain how helpless I felt that day. I didn't have a probe, I didn't have a shovel.
He always hounded everyone about having an avalanche pack. Make sure your tanks are filled. And unfortunately, when I looked at his tank, it wasn't full enough to pull that chute. So make sure it's updated.
You know, I've heard a lot of people say it, but he was the kind of man that'd give you the shirt off his back, give you the last dollar in his wallet, you know. If you needed something, he was always there, whether he was upset at you or mad at you or anything like that. If you ever needed something, he was always willing to help. I'd say that's the best quality about him.
He was a teacher and he was a giving man, you know. He was a kind heart, and he truly showed you that there are far better things in life than money or anything like that.
We're right about at the limit of visibility here, so try to get as much flying done as we can before we lose full visibility. We knew that we needed to take off soon to be able to get off the mountains safely, to not be flying through the mountains in the dark and through a storm. And right as we were preparing to leave, they found him. I think a lot of people spend so much time in the backcountry and they don't really think about all the dangers and risks. But the reality is, the avalanche that we saw on this hill, honestly, it's a hill that I probably would have ridden. But if you looked at the forecast that day, you would have known that the odds of a slide happening were very good, especially with all the wind drifted snow. So if you're ever in doubt, just stay off the slopes. Stay off anything over a 20, 30 degree slope in the backcountry if there's any sort of like question in your mind of how stable the snow is.
One of the news sources reported that he was alive when he was found and that he had died at the hospital. 2 hours in or so, the sheriff had called and said that it was just a recovery at that point.
You only have so long under the snow, 12, 11 minutes. With being buried that deep, you only had 6 to 8. Even with the right gear, it's still 6 to 8.
Avalanches, they're a tragedy. They claim way more people than they should, and it's all about awareness and education and preparedness.
Check that gear and make sure that you have all the correct things that you need to give your best effort to make it home to your friends, your family, whoever it may be.
One thing we learned with this video is we're gonna do more to be prepared ourselves and do more to educate you guys and everyone around us on the dangers of avalanches and, you know, the reality of what you can do to protect yourself and your loved ones from, you know, a needless tragedy like this happening. The final thing I'd like to say is my condolences to the family of Scott Wright, who was the victim of this tragedy. Scott was a young guy who absolutely loved the backcountry. He loved to snowmobile, and the fact is, he was a very experienced snowmobiler. So this tragedy goes to show that you know, stuff like this can happen to anybody, whether you're experienced or inexperienced. You know, we're grateful for the opportunity that we had to play a small role in, you know, this rescue and recovery effort, and ultimately we're grateful for the lesson learned, and that you know, your family is willing to use this as an opportunity to educate and teach other people, just like all of you watching. Avalanches are no joke. You got to take them seriously. Tragedy can be avoided if you just take the necessary steps. So I would strongly encourage anybody who is accessing the Utah backcountry especially to go to the UtahAvalancheCenter.org. Go to their website. They got all kinds of resources and tools and things that you can quickly look at to potentially save your life or the life of a loved one.
Yeah, I gotta keep going for him, man. You know, I didn't think I was gonna touch a snow machine for a long time after that, but he wouldn't want me to stop snowmobiling just because of something like that.
The news doesn't know everything. There were a few misconceptions on whether my dad did commit suicide or not, and I would like to clear that up. I know from people around him and myself that he was happy. He would never do something like that, and I know that for a fact deep inside my heart. He was 3 months sober the day we identified his body, but 24 hours sober or 1 hour sober, I'm still proud of him.
He will truly, truly be missed.